The air inside the Galactic Peace Summit's grand hall smelled faintly of ozone, freshly printed paper, and a blend of uncomfortably polite fear. Chairs hovered half a foot above the crystalline floor, arranged in a circular theater that groaned beneath the weight of interstellar diplomacy. At the center sat a table, obsidian, antique, supposedly carved from the ruins of the first alien civilization that made peace with itself. That was 40,000 years ago. The Galactic Empire had since seen to it that history repeated, but never learned. A human woman placed a teacup on that sacred obsidian slab. The quiet clink rang, louder than any declaration of war. She was slight, mid-40s perhaps, with silver threaded through black hair like frost on raven feathers. Her skin was pale but healthy, her eyes the soft amber of candlelight. She wore a diplomatic robe woven with the Earth delegation's crest, stylized laurel, planet, and one strange sigil no alien translator could parse. She looked kind, which meant very little. "Tea anyone?" she asked sweetly, offering a tray like she were hosting a book club rather than attending a summit on interstellar aggression. There was a long pause. Somewhere near the table's rim, the representative from the Veshtari Confederacy, tall, opaline, snake-like, hissed involuntarily. The insectoid general of the Galactic Empire, Crackthal, tapped a claw against the table's edge. "Is this a human offering?" he sneered, his translator layering oily sarcasm over his actual tone. "Of course," said the woman, smile unwavering. "Chamomile and lavender. Calming herbs. I find them useful before formal disagreements. Or executions. Depending on the day." The ambassador of the Zeolari Federation, a being composed mostly of sentient mist and exposed nerves, gave a warbling laugh. It died quickly when the woman turned her gaze toward it. Her name was Evelyn Yaga. She preferred Evie, insisted on it, actually. She was Earth's senior diplomat to the Galactic Assembly and unofficially the only living student of something whispered in locked alien archives and dismissed as legend, the Baba Yaga Protocol. Only a few remembered the protocol. Fewer still understood it was a person. "Let us proceed," Crackthal snapped, waving away the tea like it was a contagious disease. Evie set the tray down. She didn't look offended, but something about the angle of her neck, the way her fingers lingered on the porcelain, suggested that she had added another name to a very short list. The Empire's proposal was as predictable as gravity. A new frontier colony, human under-resourced off the edge of map space, had fallen behind on its trans-regional tariffs. The Empire, always so helpful, had offered to absorb the territory for the sake of stability. "It is, of course," Crackthal said with that wheezing drone of superiority, a gesture of compassion. "Your colony lacks the infrastructure to protect itself. Our military presence would be beneficial." Evie tilted her head, pouring herself a cup. "And the families living there? They will be folded into the greater purpose of galactic cohesion." She stirred her tea. The spoon never touched the cup side. A few species murmured their approval. Others, the crystalline Aletheans, the soft-spoken hollow choir, and even the nomadic Zachari, remained silent. Their diplomats exchanged subtle glances and, in one case, shifted entirely into a nonverbal posture of cautious observation. They had seen humanity before. Once, Evie smiled at Crackthal like one might smile at a neighbor's rabid dog, moments before closing the fence. "How thoughtful of you," she said. Then she took a sip. Senator Glim, an ancient being of transparent mineral and slow wisdom, finally spoke. Its voice resonated in chords. "Earth, do you accept this proposal?" Evie dabbed her lips with a linen napkin. "Thank you, Senator Glim. I appreciate your question. I would first like to tell a story." "Story?" Crackthal barked, already agitated. Evie ignored him. "My grandmother lived in a cabin on the edge of a black forest. She brewed teas from flowers and bark, and animals never came too close. When I was a girl, I asked her why. No one interrupted. She said, 'Because kindness makes you predictable.' A smile, though it hides the teeth." A ripple passed through the hall, subtle and unwelcome. The speaker system buzzed for a moment, although no one spoke. Evie looked up, eyes soft but strangely unblinking. We decline your proposal, General. Crackthall straightened. Then we will proceed without your consent. Our fleet is already in orbit. Another pause. Evie leaned forward, calm. Is that so? Behind her, an aide stepped forward and activated a projection. Holograms bloomed in midair. Static, flickering images. Video feeds of Empire starships suddenly losing power. Of crew members trapped in their own command bridges, banging on sealed doors. Of entire fleets, cut off, isolated. Then one last clip played. It was silent. A cold moon, once used for refugee overflow, now housed rows of small wooden dolls, hand-carved, slumped in chairs and beds, staring blankly outward. One Empire scout's suit cam showed him picking one up. The doll looked exactly like him. The video cut to black. Crackthall surged upward. You dare. Evie's teacup clicked softly on the obsidian. You shouldn't have touched our children. He froze. What? Her voice didn't rise. 2 weeks ago, an Empire raid hit a humanitarian outpost. You called it collateral cleansing. You took hostages. One of them was mine. There was no formal record of Evie having a child. No diplomatic database had it. But the expression on her face was not born of performance. I cried once, she said, almost musing. Once. A few diplomats noticed the lights dimmed as she spoke. Coincidence, surely. The Alathian senator did not seem to think so. He watched her the way one watches the ocean just before a tsunami, puzzled at how calm it looks. Crackthall scoffed, recovering. You think this melodrama, this ancient superstition, will scare us? Evie stood. For a moment, she seemed taller. Not physically, not really, but more present. Like gravity bent slightly toward her. Her robe shifted like it caught wind that no one else felt. Let me be plain, she said. You trespassed on our soil. You kidnapped our kin. You desecrated a place meant to heal. Then she leaned in just a little, eyes gentle. We're not angry, General. Just disappointed. It was such a human phrase. So familiar, so quietly devastating. One of the younger Empire delegates, a lizard-like creature barely past adolescence, actually whimpered. The meeting dissolved into procedural noise. Crackthall demanded military briefings. Comms officers fumbled with long-range scanners. Other diplomats retreated to private booths to report to their governments. Panic hadn't spread yet, but it was close. Evie walked slowly from the hall. No guard stopped her. No one asked her to stay. Even the doors opened before she reached them, as though trying to hurry her out or get away. Outside, in the empty corridor of the summit ship, her aide caught up. They'd begun scrambling the Third Fleet, he said, breathless. Let them, she replied. He hesitated. Are you okay? She stopped. Her face was still, unreadable. Then, with an odd smile, she reached into her pocket and withdrew a tiny wooden figurine. A doll. It had golden painted eyes and a crack on one side. I carved this for her, she whispered. She liked foxes. The aide's voice dropped. Is she? Gone, Evie said. And then she wept. One tear. Silent. Graceful. A priestess's grief. The hallway lights dimmed again. Inside the hall, a diplomat from the gas giant born Viashari looked up sharply. Did you feel that? No. What? Like something ancient just woke up. Back in the corridor, Evie placed the doll carefully beside a vent and whispered something in a language the translators didn't recognize. Then she smiled. It wasn't warm, and it wasn't human. Just before the summit doors closed behind her, someone heard her murmur, I warn them. Never make a witch cry. And somewhere in the starless space between systems, the Empire's last unchallenged fleet disappeared, without sound, without light, without trace. Yaga sipped her tea, and the war began. The transmission was not supposed to be seen. It was logged as Level 9 internal review only, buried beneath Empire encryption protocols, so dense they required an entire moon's processor array just to unspool. It surfaced by accident or by design during the second session of the Galactic Summit. It flickered to life mid-sentence, a static stain feed from a body cam on one of the Empire's elite shock troopers. The silence in the summit hall grew visceral. The footage showed the arrival. No warning, no declaration, just warships descending like shadows with teeth. The colony was small, barely more than prefab domes and crop towers, circled by a meager fence. But there had been laughter there. Children. The camera caught one girl clinging to a toy, a fox, red and ragged, and looking up at the sky as it broke open. They didn't use plasma. Too clean. They used kinetic rounds, slugs and shells, like hunters culling animals. The feed jittered once more and ended with a sharp, panic breath. Then blackness. No audio accompanied the video. No need. Evie didn't blink as the transmission ended. The summit chamber sat in suffocating quiet. Even Crackthall said nothing, though his claws curled subtly against the table. Senator Glim leaned back, fractal facets dimming as if absorbing an unpleasant truth. Evie finally spoke, voice soft as snowfall. This footage was marked restricted, sealed under war doctrine codes. But it leaked. Funny how justice always finds a window. No one asked how she obtained it. Crackthall bristled, his translators clicking to adjust for rising tension. This is an isolated incident. Unapproved. The captain responsible will be reprimanded. You murdered 32 civilians, she said. Unconfirmed. You took 6 survivors. Her voice trembled. Just once, a brief ripple. You executed 4 in custody. 2 remain unaccounted for. Again, human exaggeration. One of them was a child. Her tone dropped low. Mine. No one breathed. Not even the aliens who didn't need air. Evie didn't raise her voice. It remained infuriatingly gentle. Her hands were folded in front of her like she was about to deliver a bedtime story. My daughter's name was Alina. She was 8. She liked singing in the greenhouse tunnels and watching birds build nests in the hydroponic rafters. She said they reminded her of home, even though she was born on that colony. She paused. Her gaze did not move, but her stillness was suddenly charged, magnetic. She called me Mama, which, when I made her tea, she said I had magic hands. And when I told her stories about Baba Yaga and the house with chicken legs, she'd laugh and pretend to fly. The room remained still. A diplomat from the Ulan Thari Collective, known for their ice world stoicism, quietly turned away. Evie inhaled a whisper of a breath. She died on her knees, with a toy in her arms, shot through the back. Crackthall shifted in his seat. You presume a great deal. No, she said, I grieve a great deal. You presume immunity. She stood again, the movement small but seismic. The Empire has called it a regrettable mistake. You blame protocol gaps. You say fog of war and operational necessity. But I call it what it is. She turned to the room, voice cold as carved glass. A reckoning. Senator Glim stirred. You intend retaliation? Evie did not answer directly. She looked at her tea, untouched. In our culture, she said, we bury our dead with things they loved. Small things, tokens. Dolls, usually. My grandmother carved one for me when I was a child. It still smells like cedar. I made one for Alina just last month. She reached into her sleeve and held it up. It was tiny, wooden, a girl's shape roughly chiseled. Its face bore a painted fox mask. One arm was cracked and glued. I placed this at the last known site of the outpost, she said, on the soil where she was taken. The toy vanished back into her robe. They moved it, she whispered, which was their second mistake. No one asked the first. On the bridge of the Empire's advanced cruiser Verdict Claw, orbiting the contested colony, technicians were beginning to report anomalies. Navigation arrays were cycling incorrect star maps. Door systems opened and shut at random, accompanied by lullabies in Earth-Russian dialects. No breach. No sabotage detected. Just dolls, appearing in places they hadn't been before. One on the captain's seat, another in the engine core. One was found inside a sealed helmet. Crackthall's datapad buzzed once. He glanced at the alert. His second fleet, Task Force Vern, had just gone silent. 4 ships. No response. No trace. He silenced the device without looking up. Evie folded her hands. I understand now why they feared her. My grandmother. The stories always made her sound monstrous. A witch who ate children and walked in a house made of bones. But those were wrong. She was never the monster. She leaned forward, eyes soft as velvet and sharp as razors. She was the consequence. Crackthal stood. This is diplomatic theater. Empty threats. You want blood for a mistake. No, her voice cut him short. I want them back. But since I can't have that, I'll settle for the truth. A new hollow bloomed at her side. Surveillance footage. An Empire officer, rank sigils unmistakable, handing over a weeping child to a research drone. Coordinates. Timestamps. The child was not Alina. The child was still alive. There was a sharp inhale from someone behind Crackthal. I knew, Evie said quietly, you wouldn't kill them all. That would be too clean. And too fast. She let that sentence hang in the air like a blade. The outpost wasn't just raised. It was harvested. The term made several diplomats flinch. Crackthal looked furious now. Not offended, cornered. You're making accusations without recourse, she finished. Yes, that's the point. I have none. You wrote the rules. You stacked the deck. You built the game. But you forgot, General. Humans play long. Her smile returned, faint and hollow. We don't start wars often, but when we do not lose. Senator Glim's voice broke through the growing static. Ambassador Yaga, if you're suggesting retaliation without council approval. Not retaliation, she replied. Recognition of what has already begun. She raised her hand. Another transmission flickered into view. This one was recent. Live feed. A world near the Outer Rim, a resource hub vital to the Empire's titanium supply, was aflame. Not with bombs or plasma or traditional weapons. The fires were oddly precise. Command centers, fleet docks, archives. Gone. Civilian zones left untouched. The screen zoomed in. A doll sat upright in the ash. Smoke curled behind it like wings. No weapon signature, Evie said softly. No known ship identified. No exit trace. Glim looked at her. How did you? But he stopped. He knew. Humanity hadn't sent ships. They had sent ghosts. Outside the summit chamber, a soft vibration passed through the deck, imperceptible to most. But a few species felt it. The ones with memory in their blood and instinct etched into the bone. Something ancient had moved. Back in her quarters, Evie knelt before a tray of small wooden carvings. She lit a candle beside them and whispered names as she passed a finger over each. Juliana, Bram, Kessie, Alina. She touched the fox-faced one last. Its painted eye was smeared. Behind her, her aide stood quietly, holding a new report. We lost another probe team, he said. Where? Aboard the Nexus Crown. No survivors. Internal systems locked. Same signature. Dulls. Again. Evie nodded slowly. Good. The aide hesitated. There are rumors, ma'am. Among the council staff. They say you're invoking something. A curse. A program older than Earth's calendar. She smiled without looking up. Let them talk. Ghost stories keep people cautious. And you, he asked. What do you believe? She blew out the candle. But the stars went quiet for a reason. In the summit hall, panic was turning methodical. Council scrambled to confirm or deny what they'd just seen. Half the Galactic Empire's outer ring was now in communication blackout. Shadow fleets moved, but their routes changed. Commanders rerouted without orders. Fear without direction made them twitchy. Dangerous. Crackthal paced inside his command chamber aboard the Imperial Dreadnought Obsidian Hand. The room was designed to calm his kind, bioluminescent walls, rhythmic drones, a victory chance. Yet none of it helped. A wooden doll now sat in his personal war shrine, balanced atop the polished bones of his first conquest. He stared at it for a long time before smashing it. Evie sat at her window, watching the stars with a small cup of tea that had long gone cold. She wasn't angry anymore. Anger was loud. This was something quieter, heavier, something final. The door chimed. Her aide entered, hesitant. "We received a message, ma'am. It's strange." He handed her a data chip. She played it. A garbled voice. Metallic. Tired. Frantic. "She's coming. No ships. No troops. Just her. And the dolls. She's not asking anymore." It cut off. Evie set the chip down. She looked to the stars. And somewhere out there, another fleet blinked out of existence. The stars didn't scream. They simply went quiet. General Crackthall stood in the central command bay of the Obsidian Hand, surrounded by holographic projections flickering between red alerts and static-filled feeds. A planet was missing. Not destroyed. Not glassed. Just gone. The satellites that once ringed it spun silently in its absence, confused. No debris. No atmosphere. No orbit. As if the world had never been there at all. "Has anyone recovered a single body?" he asked, though the answer was clear in the silence. "No, General," came the clipped voice of his adjutant. "But we found these." A slow where signaled the arrival of a containment drone. Inside the transparent pod floated 3 wooden dolls. They bore no symbols. Their eyes were closed. One held a painted star. Where were they located? In the reactor chamber of the Pride of Vok. The ship had been sealed from within. Self-destruct systems were overridden. Every escape pod deployed simultaneously into each other. Crackthall did not respond. He turned and walked back toward his private chamber. He didn't trust the walls anymore, but they were thick enough to block the sense of helplessness clawing up his carapace. Human tricks. Human misdirection. They were always behind. Always weaker. Their technology outdated. Their numbers sparse. But this was sorcery. They had weaponized fear. Evie Yaga had done this. The witch with warm eyes and cold hands. On the bridge of the Reckoner's loom, orbiting the Galactic Assembly Station, Evie stood with a thin file in her hands and no expression on her face. Around her, Earth's delegation moved like phantoms. Silent, sharp-eyed, and exact in motion. They were not soldiers, not in uniform, but the discipline ran beneath their skin like braided steel. "We have full perimeter coverage," her aide reported. "Cloaked fleet holding tight. External scans show no Empire vessels closer than 6 parsecs." "Begin the operation," she replied. A single command, delivered without emphasis. A surgeon's word before the incision. The Reckoner's loom wasn't a ship in any traditional sense. It was a mobile neural weapon, part memory archive, part psychological warfare array, outlawed across the civilized galaxy. It didn't fire projectiles. It whispered to minds. In orbit above the Empire's main data vaults, it activated a pulse. Every server, archive, and storage unit across 7 systems began leaking images. Families burned alive, soldiers laughing. The moment a child's scream cut through an atmosphere before the audio file cut out. All time-stamped. All real. Every lie the Empire told, exposed. Every secret operation, unmasked. Names, ranks, coordinates. And always, nestled in the final frame, a doll. Crackthall watched from the Obsidian Hand, the projections blooming like invasive vines across every console. "This is terrorism," he snarled. "No," said a voice from behind him. He turned. Evie Yaga stood at the threshold of the bridge. No guards. No alarm had triggered. She held no weapon. She wore a civilian coat stitched with a stitched fox emblem near the collar. "I would have knocked," she said, stepping in, "but your door security has some vulnerabilities. Someone really should audit your AI." The crew froze. Even the targeting systems refused to acknowledge her presence. Or perhaps they did, and chose silence. "You broke into my flagship," Crackthall said slowly. She tilted her head. "You broke into my home." His hand drifted toward his blade, more ceremonial than practical. "I'm not here to kill you," she said. "Then what?" he growled. "To see your face when you realize it's over." Crackthall lunged. His blade never reached her. The floor beneath him opened, not physically, but perceptually. He saw memories. Not his. The child's doll. Her last breath. The toy fox crushed beneath a boot. He reeled backward, claws scraping metal. "Do you see it now?" she asked. her voice like fog over a graveyard. This isn't war. This is the consequence you were never taught to fear. The ship's lights dimmed. The bridge crew fell unconscious where they stood, slumping gently to the floor as though sleep had claimed them. Evie walked past Crackthall, unhurried. She stood by the main viewport, watching the stars swirl. "There are patterns in cruelty," she said. "Empires forget what it's like to lose, and they always mistake silence for permission." He crawled toward her, eyes wild. "You will not win. We are legion." She looked down at him. "And yet here I am alone." Outside the stars rippled, not with ships, but with presence. Human minds stretched across light years, linked through resonance, not data. A collective vengeance, not an army, an echo. Each victim remembered, each memory weaponized. Crackthall's ship began to shudder. "Do you know what your last mistake was?" she asked. He bared his fangs. "You assumed we wanted peace." She knelt beside him. He flinched, but she simply placed a small wooden doll in his hand. It had his face. "We wanted justice. But justice is a luxury now." She stood and vanished before his eyes, just gone. Aboard the Galactic Assembly Station, chaos ruled. Broadcasts of burning archives and doll-filled halls were flooding every channel. Delegates demanded explanations. Civilized species demanded sanctions. The Empire found itself alone, surrounded by systems that had quietly, finally, turned away. On Earth, the feeds were quiet, not because they had no words, but because they had said enough. Evie stood alone in a forest outside Moscow, where snow kissed the ground gently. The wind smelled of pine and smoke. She held the doll in one hand, carved freshly. It had fox ears. "I'm done," she whispered to the trees. "She can rest now." The wind didn't answer. A soft voice spoke behind her. "You know this isn't over." It was the aide. Younger, still unsure, but changed now. Hardened. She didn't turn. "No," she said. "But it's quieter." They stood there together, side by side. Somewhere far above, Crackthall's fleet collapsed inward. Not from a weapon. From itself. Command systems rewrote protocols in loops. Orders became contradictions. Officers began to hallucinate. Some said they heard lullabies. The Empire crumbled not in fire, but in unraveling. Evie looked up once more to the stars. They had stopped screaming. They watched, waiting. The last mistake had been thinking she could be reasoned with. That her smile meant safety. That her grief had limits. Far above, the Reckoner's loom released its final message into deep space. No signature. No coordinates. Just a voice. Soft. Unforgiving. "Let this be your lullaby." And then, silence. The Galactic Assembly Station, once considered the height of interstellar civilization, floated in silence above the shifting gas fields of Rizhar 6. Its once vibrant halls, where alliances were brokered and species flirted with immortality, were now dimmed and tense. Whispers replaced speeches. Delegates no longer discussed trade. They watched, waited, and wondered what the humans would do next. Yaga stood at the heart of the observation chamber, framed by the vast ring of stars beyond the glass. Her tea had long gone cold, but she held it anyway, cradling the warmth that wasn't there. Behind her, Earth's diplomatic cohort remained silent, trained, ready, and unshaken. But not needed. She had already done the necessary things. Now she was waiting. The speaker system crackled. A voice slithered through the static. "This is Supreme Strategos Vaketal, speaking for the remnants of the Galactic Empire. We propose an immediate ceasefire. Terms negotiable. We request dialogue." Evie tilted her head as though listening to a familiar lullaby. "Request denied," she said. The words echoed across the station, broadcast through every diplomatic channel in range. In a chamber 3 floors above, Senator Glim flared faintly. "She's ended it already." His aide blinked. "But the war hasn't started." The senator made a sound like a shiver in crystal. "It has. You just didn't recognize the battlefield." Back on the station floor, a dozen minor races were gathering near the edge of the council's nerve core. None dared approach her. They watched her instead, as if she were a monument to a story their ancestors never told. The humans had warned them. Again and again, she had told them. And now they understood why Earth didn't need to raise its voice to be heard. A projection lit behind her. Empire territory, flickering red to gray. System after system disconnected. Not destroyed, disassembled. Infrastructure crumbled, not from bombs, but from algorithmic collapse. AI corrupted, navigational stars remapped, command networks folded inward by code that had no origin. Each flash of light came with a signature. A doll, different each time, carved with care, left in command chairs, beside captains' logs, on pillows next to admirals' corpses. The Empire's last stronghold, Varnax Prime, erupted in a quiet bloom of failure. Ships docked their activated drive cores mid-berth, destroying each other. Not from an attack, from obedience. As if something had whispered a suggestion and they simply complied. Evie closed her eyes. I warned them. Her aide stepped forward, hesitant. Ma'am, you should see this. A new feed opened. An encrypted signal from one of the last surviving Imperial warlords, High Executor Ralvek. He sat in a half-lit chamber with blood on his hands and a doll in his lap. His eyes were wild, desperate. You win, he said. Whatever you are, whatever you become. But please, just tell me. How? You had no fleets, no armies. What are you? Evie didn't reply. But the transmission ended with a sound, soft, childlike, and in a forgotten tongue. A lullaby, the one her daughter loved. She stepped away from the observation window and walked into the central dais of the assembly chamber. Hundreds of representatives watched from tiers above, unsure if they were witnessing the rise of something new or the burial of everything old. She wore no weapon, no armor, no seal of command, just the long gray coat stitched with her daughter's fox mark. Galactic Assembly, she said quietly. This is not a war. This is an answer. Senator Glim lowered his head, facets dulled in reverence. She raised her eyes, not in anger, but in memory. You permitted monsters to wear uniforms and call it law. You nodded at the word efficiency when it meant murder. You shrugged at cruelty when it wore a flag. And when we asked you to look, you looked away. She let the silence carry her fury. They took my daughter, but they also took their own future. Empires rot from within, and the rot began the moment you believed conquest was culture. The Alethian envoy, long proud of its neutrality, stood without ceremony. We renounce our ties to the Empire. Others followed. The assembly began to shatter, not from fear, but from shame. What she had done with ghosts, they could not do with armies. She had changed the current. A representative from the Vexery swarm spoke up, his voice trembling through its mandibles. What now, human? What do you want? Evie paused. The question held centuries behind it. What do humans want? What does Earth seek, having proven it can topple titans with grief and silence? She could have asked for planets, for tribute, for the seat of the council itself. But she shook her head. We want nothing. Stunned silence. We came here with peace in our hands. You spat on it. We gave you years of patience. You called it weakness. You took our children. You expected submission. She looked upward. And still we only gave you justice. The stars beyond the glass shifted, forming into a shape only visible for a moment, a wide eye. Watching, then gone. Her aide's calm lit up. Confirmed, he whispered. The last Empire command node has gone dark. Evie turned away from the assembly. The war was over. It had never looked like a war. But it had taken everything from them. And she had taken everything in return. As she stepped toward the lift, one of the delegates, an old veteran from the Orion border, called after her. Is that it then? Is this the end of Earth's vengeance? She paused, just before the doors closed. Her voice came softly. It was never vengeance. It was love. You just didn't understand how dangerous love can be. The doors hissed shut. Later, in a small clearing on a quiet moon, Evie stood alone beside a simple wooden marker. She placed a final doll beneath it, one carved with her own face, smiling faintly. You were right, she murmured to the soil. I do have magic hands. The wind brushed her coat. No storm followed, just the quiet. Back in the void, the Reckoner's loom began its shutdown sequence. The AI's last words were logged, though no one knew where or when. They will remember the tear, not the scream. In distant systems, mothers whispered new lullabies to their children, ones that warned of the fox-eyed woman who walked among stars and righted wrongs with silence. Empires would not rise the same way again, because once a witch cried, and the galaxy burned itself down trying to understand why.